Hello BookTube, I'm Scott.
I'm not.
We are Gunpowder Fiction and Plot, and this is a wrap-up of all the books we have read for 2021 so far.
I guess
this is our January wrap-up. That's what we'll call it when we post it. But what we've decided is that wraps and TBRs, they're not quite working for us. We're trying to find something else to do. So we're going to experiment.
And you'll notice that this is, like, if we do this once a month, they're always going to be epic. So we're going to try and do Friday reads for a little bit.
Yeah.
We're going to see how that goes for the month of February. What do you think? Do you mind a long wrap? Do you like a long wrap?
But just to put it out, there's going to be, I think, 31 books in this wrap.
Yeah. So it's getting a bit cray.
So we're probably going to, it's probably going to be an hour and a half long. We'll see.
We'll try not.
Anyway, I'm just going to go through my books in chronological order because I've got twice as many to review as you. We're going to go 2 for me, 1 for you.
Yeah, I'm sure that'll screw up
and when we get to a book that we've both read, it's going to stuff up. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
So, first book I'm going to review is Breasts and Eggs. I read this as part of the Invisible Cities Readathon. This is a Japanese book, and I didn't read this because I DNF'd this book. This is the only book I DNF'd for January, and when you see some of the books I've finished and what I thought of them, you'll realise that I'm not very good at DNFing this month. I would like to know if you have read this book. Is the transphobia in the scene in the bath, which is where I read that entire scene. I was happy to have transphobia in a book when it explores transphobia. But for me, this book came across as like super chic feminist, and then there was transphobia in it, and I cannot deal with feminism that is transphobic. I cannot deal with anti-racist movements that don't consider women as part of the movement. Like, you're either all or none because they all intersect and they all play into each other, and if you don't understand that, you're not helping your cause.
Yeah. If your feminism is not intersectional, who's it for anyway?
But if you have read this book, I am totally happy if this is some sort of cultural thing that I don't get. If there's something going on here that I don't understand. I was enjoying this book up until that point, so if you have read it and you do think that I am wrong, let me know, because I would be happy to give this book a second shot.
Also, it's on my TBR, so if it's full of transphobia and ugliness, can you tell me? So I don't read it, because I don't want to read transphobia and ugliness.
Yeah. So, and to be honest, this was actually really done because I put this on my January TBR, and then Kat from Biblio Obscura said, "Oh, I heard that was transphobic," and I would have, if that was a haul video, I would not have read that book. But because it was a TBR,
and you'd already decided,
I read it anyway. Like,
that's why TBRs are stupid.
So I thought that was really weird. So the second one I'll review here is Saga Volume 1. This one, we did a page 112 with Kieran at KD Books. This was in it, and we bagged it for being misogynist. I don't believe this book is misogynist, by the way. Having read that, I don't believe it's not misogynist yet. And this is essentially my issue with this graphic novel, is that I got to the end and I was still like feeling my way into it. I was still like, could be good, could be rubbish. I'm not really sure. I want to pick up the next one. But there's like 10 of these and they're only halfway done. And I'm like, how many of these will I buy before I decide if I like this or not? Because essentially, I want to read more of it, but I don't know what I think yet.
I feel like this gets recommended by such diverse people.
I've seen Olivia recommend it after Kieran recommended it. I think that's an interesting crossover.
That is an interesting crossover
between those two booktubers. And I've seen somebody else recommend it, and I can't remember who. So if it's you, I'm sorry, but I forgot who you were. But I'm not naming you.
That's so rude.
I know. But yeah, essentially, when I read a book, I'm like, it can be 5 stars, it can be 1 star, it can be anything in between, and it sort of like shaves off the star ratings it can be as the book goes on. And this one, I got to the end and I'm like, could be 5 stars, could be 1 star. I'm not really sure. And so I've given it 3 stars, but I really feel like...
You just don't know how you feel about it.
It really should be unrated. I really just... It felt like it ended at the beginning of the story. So,
but did you like the characters? The art is beautiful.
The art is beautiful. If you're thinking of picking this up, don't like read it on the train or something. Not that you can with COVID,
but it's a bit porny. Is that what you're saying?
There's definitely some scenes where there's penis, there's boobs,
well, as long as it's equal opportunity.
Yeah, I'm just, if you're on the train, you probably don't want to be looking at tits and cock when Granny is over your shoulder. That's just my opinion.
Serves them right from reading over your shoulder.
Yeah, so I want to know if you have read Saga, and did anybody get to the end of Volume 1 and go,
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. And if you did have that experience, did you end up loving it? Because bags of potential in this book, but I felt like
I think episode 1, Bags of Potential, that's a great review.
But I felt like it basically just, it finished before I could...
But if this was a TV show...
If this was a TV show, I would watch the next episode. I would give this 3 or 4 episodes before I made a call on it. That is...
So you're just being a tight ass. It's the money.
Oh, it's totally the money. Totally. I have to buy I could buy 4 other books for the price of having an opinion on this book, which I guess everybody says about graphic novels. And this is the first graphic novel I've read. And I don't know if graphic novels are a thing that I like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I'm a little bit unsure.
I think that you folks in the comments should tell him what graphic novels he should read as a beginner to graphic novels to find out whether he likes them or not. It may not be this one. Maybe there's a couple of others that you should read before you come back to this.
There is another graphic novel in this wrap later on, so we'll see.
The audiobook of Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness. I picked this up because Jonathan Van Ness on Queer Eye is like a ray of sunshine, and I just needed a ray of sunshine last week, and what I got was just all the horror show trauma of his life that has created this beautiful, positive person, it wrapped up in a memoir. So it was not the ray of sunshine of a book that I was hoping for, but his positivity did shine through the whole thing.
So it's a good book, but you picked up the wrong book.
It was not the book I wanted at the time. I just wanted some fluff, and it was not fluff. He's incredible, and the things that he's overcome in order to just carry on being a human being and have the attitude that he has. Everyone should read this. Anyone who has a problem with being positive about life should read this book, because if he can do it, then there's no excuse.
Ooh.
He's had a pretty rough run, and he's sparkles and sunshine, and I love it.
The problem with that recommendation is that you'd have to self-identify as one of those people.
As a grump.
Yeah.
Scott is a grump and needs to read this book. This is a recommendation for my husband.
Yeah. All right. So you recommend me to read this book. Next one I'm going to review is The Moors Account by Laila Lalami. Is that? Laila Lalami. This is my pick for Morocco for the Invisible Cities Readathon, and this book was not about Morocco. I felt like... So the premise of this book is there is a man, it does start in Morocco, the Spanish are there, and he essentially sells himself into slavery. He then goes to Spain, and then he is transported to America on a conquistador quest. And it is his relationship with the with his Spanish people as they experience all sorts of problems, and they end up dying. They end up relying on the indigenous population of Florida and Mexico to survive, and the slave ends up learning the language and being quite useful to the Spanish people and being treated like an equal. And it's his relationship between the indigenous people, who they are essentially slaving,
right,
and himself, who, by the way, when he was in Morocco, was a slave trader and then got out of the business. And then they're lost in the desert, and it's about his changing relationship with the Spanish people and how that changes. And it's a commentary on essentially slavery and the mistreatment of people. This is a book with a lot of potential, but it sadly doesn't deliver. I felt it very hard to empathise with the main character. I thought the choice of making him a slave trader in Morocco was interesting, but ultimately made it worse. It made it very hard to empathise with what was going on. It made it hard for me to empathise with his situation, because I was sort of like, well, you deserve it because you're a bastard. And there was an attempt to make that a little bit more humanising and an understanding of what was wrong about that. But ultimately, I did not like the characters in this book. And, so I don't recommend this novel. Other people may like this novel.
But you did it.
Bags of potential, but didn't deliver is how I think about it. And then we come to what I think is going to be not just the worst book of the month, but a front runner for the worst book of the year, and that's The Memory Police by Yoko Aguaga.
Oh, you really didn't like this. You had a big whinge about this almost every day.
Oh. Okay, firstly, let's say this has been misadvertised here. This is advertised as a dystopian novel. It is not. But what on earth this novel is meant to be, I am still confused of. It didn't have plot, it didn't have character, it didn't create a feeling, it didn't create emotion.
It definitely doesn't sound like a Scott book. If you don't have a strong plot, you really struggle.
Yeah, but I accept that, like, some books without plot paint really strong characters. This book didn't have strong characters either. This book was not critiquing society. The Memory Police. So if this, I'm assuming that everybody knows what this book is about. This is essentially a book where something vanishes, and there are these policemen that sort of ensure that it does vanish every day. So it might be that your arm vanishes one day, or that books vanish, or whatever, and the policemen sort of ensure that it does vanish and that some people remember. But why that is happening, the point of that is not explained. That is it. So that is not a device to control people. That's not making a critique on society. And I fail to see what this book is trying to do. It is just somebody has an idea and they
totally
put
the
words
kind
on
of
a paper.
Criticism that makes me want to read the book, like right now.
Right now, like,
especially from you, I'm like, oh,
it doesn't have plot,
so
it doesn't have character, it doesn't create emotion. It's like, I kept reading this book going, why is this popular? Like, there must be something more to this book. And when I got to the end, I'm like, no, you're shitting me. That's it. I just didn't get it.
Well, I mean, clearly you didn't get it. But
I recommend this book to really, really boring people who are easily entertained, because
I'm gonna have to read it.
You're gonna have to. It's. I'm glad to hear other people say that her other works are quite different to The Memory Police, so I might give her another shot. But,
which is good, because I think I have 2 on my TBR now.
You do. You have 2. All right. Now, what's your next one?
I have to look it up because there's so many. Because audiobooking, but not even just audiobooking. I've read more physical books this month than I read in any one month of last year. So
has audiobooking helped you read?
I feel like it's created a momentum for me. Also, I've really embraced reading smaller books, like not necessarily only smaller books, but okay, so The Death of Vivek OG is the next one for me. This is our Read Under the Bed book club pick, so I don't actually want to spend a lot of time talking about this yet because we're all about to launch into our conversation in Discord as everyone finishes it, but I do have to say that Akwaeke Emezi is just like my hero. Just love their writing.
They're incredible.
Yeah, so that's really all I want to say about this. When everyone finishes and we wrap it up, I'm sure that Scott and I will do a proper review of this book. I think Freshwater is still my favourite, but I did love this.
The next one I read was The Wind That Laid Waste by Selva Almada, which was an Argentinian pick for the Invisible Cities readathon. I've had quite a good experience with Argentinian literature up until now, but I did not like this book. I had quite a poor start to the year, didn't I? Like, thus far, my favourite book has been Saga, which I did not have an opinion on.
About. It's alright, we know how many books you got through. I'm sure there's one that was good.
There is a couple of very good books later on.
Yeah.
The Wind That Laid Waste by Selva Almada is a book about a priest and his insistence on converting people, and then a storm comes along and he takes refuge in a garage with a man who seems a little bit violent, and their two children get along, and the daughter of the priest remembers how the priest just drove off and left her mother on the side of the road with nothing, and this priest is a horribly toxic man. This man in the garage seems a little bit better, but
not so much.
Also, you don't see as much of his backstory as you do of the priest's backstory, and I didn't really get what this book was
selling.
There were bits and pieces that were interesting, but it's when there are no likeable characters in the novel, it does make it hard for me to like the novel. I suspect that the daughter of the priest is meant to be that likeable character, but there's quite a lot about this priest, and really you end up hating the priest, and it just doesn't... It just feels like a portrait of toxic masculinity, and I'm not sure if that was intended to be the case or not.
Well, I think that's an important portrait to paint still.
I definitely think it is an important portrait to paint. Definitely don't read this book if you're sensitive to critiques about religion.
Yeah, okay.
And if you like critiques about religion, you may enjoy this book, but I don't think it's that good. Now, the next one I read was Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood.
Oh.
And this one disappointed me. And I think it disappointed me because I had watched the Netflix show. And the Netflix show was very faithful to the book.
It is very faithful to the book.
And
the acting is very good.
And I actually want to say that the Netflix show is better than the book, which surprises me because I generally will prefer the book. Although if I watch a TV show before the book, I'm generally nicer to the TV show. The character of Grace is just an excellent character from Margaret Atwood. And I felt like that came across better in the television show than in the book. But essentially a lot of the twists and the turns and a lot of the subtleties of Grace's character were already known to me when I went into the book. And so it wasn't this slow discovery of this very creepy, and you're never quite sure.
Yeah.
You're never sure whether she is like this virtuous, excellent woman, or whether she is this creepy, manipulative murderer, or something in between. And that is lovely and wonderful.
Such a good
book. Yeah.
I do think it's one of those stories that the second time you read it, nothing will ever be good as that first discovery of how this character unfolds her little possibilities.
The portrait of this is essentially a portrait of Grace in this novel. I mean, there's more to it, but that is the star of this novel, and when I already was familiar with that, it just didn't feel fresh. So I only gave it 3 stars, but I do think if you have
ripped off.
I mean, star rating for me is about my enjoyment of the
Yeah,
novel.
I know, but so good, such a good novel, ripped off.
And I do think that watching that Netflix series before reading it did
take away some enjoyment.
Did take away some enjoyment of it, but if you
I think that's probably fair, but Alias Grace is like, I would say my maybe second favourite manga. It's way up there.
Yeah, Grace is a 16-year-old girl, although she does change ages through the book because it's not over. It's her whole life. It's her whole life, yeah. And she's in jail for murder, which she never says she doesn't commit, but there's a lot of doubt about whether she committed it, whether she was coerced into committing it, whether she was framed. And Grace is telling you her story up until that point, and Grace is very... She has her morals and but it's quite... I think that you should read this if you haven't read this.
But definitely don't watch the Netflix. I think I'm going to talk about this one next. The Lost Future of Pepperharrow. This is a sequel, so I don't want to get too much into what it's about, but it does continue with the characters from The Watchmaker of Filigree Street. This one is set for the most part in Japan. This is the best Natasha Pulley I have read to date.
And you've read all 3?
I've read all 3 that she is currently released. There's a new one coming out this year, though. Very exciting. I love the whimsy and the politics and the magic not magic and the science and the characters and the romance and all of the things. I really love Natasha Pulley's writing. I think that it's just so easy to read, and it's fun and it's surprising. This was my favourite of all of them, though. So, if you've read it, tell me in the comments so we can chat about it.
You recommend this if you've read Watchmaker of Filigree Street?
Oh, definitely.
Liked it,
Definitely read the follow-up. Yeah, for sure. But I can't imagine anyone who liked Watchmaker of Filigree Street not reaching straight for it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to do 3 now, rather than 2. The next one is, I actually want to do a single book review of this because it's quite interesting, so I might keep it a bit quick, but Roots by Alex Haley. This is an intergenerational novel written in the 70s, and it takes place over 8 generations of Alex Haley's family, starting in Guyana, and then travelling to America, and then following his family and the slavery, his family's sort of fight with slavery, and essentially examining racism around slavery and post-slavery. It really does centre on 2 characters, Kunta Kinte, who is like he's nicknamed the African, he is the first slave, and then his grandson Chicken George, who
Excellent name.
Raises chickens to chicken fight.
That's why he's Chicken George.
That's why he's Chicken
Makes
George.
Sense.
This was a really good book, and I've given it 5 stars, and I really liked this book. I thought the choice of having slave masters that were good and showing that they were evil was a very interesting choice from Haley. Like, essentially when you're reading a book about slavery, you sort of expect, like like read Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, and the slave masters are just fucking evil in that.
Yeah.
And in this book, we sort of had nice slave owners who then did some shit things and justified it. And that was an interesting depth that Haley went to. I would criticise this book for being male-centric. Between Kinte and George, there is Kissy, and Kissy is really a footnote in this novel, and could have been a major character, but does really favour the men character. So that is a criticism of it. After reading this, I found out. So sort of the thing is that this is historical fiction that is sort of, you know, like that TV show Who Do You Think You Are, but fictionalized.
Yeah.
And essentially, there's a lot of doubt over whether the characters in this novel are indeed real, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that a lot of the evidence put forward by Haley is at best Haley is naive, but probably he was being a bit dishonest.
Yeah, okay.
And I'll probably discuss that in a bit more detail in the book review, but as a novel discussing slavery in an intergenerational sense, I thought it was very good.
Okay.
So I do recommend that. The two books I want to discuss together are my two books by Thomas Hardy that I read this month. The Hand of Ethelberta is Thomas Hardy doing a comedy, and I'm going to keep this review of it quite short. Hardy was quite good friends with George Gissing. If you don't know who George Gissing is, he's an excellent Victorian writer. He's one of the few male Victorian writers who is really worthwhile reading. And Gissing and Hardy were good friends, and Gissing said, poor old Hardy, of all of his books, this is the worst. And
harsh.
I have to say I agree.
You agree?
I agree. This is not... Hardy tried something, it failed. He tried to be funny, he was not.
He's not a funny man?
Do you know, it's not even that he wasn't funny, it's just that the way he rambles on with his story, it's not built for comedy, it's built for drama, and he doesn't, like, it's just the wrong style. And then the next one I read was, probably can't see that, The Return of the Native. This is one of my favourite Hardy novels. In fact, I would say, other than Tess and Jude, this is my favourite. So third favourite, I guess. This is the novel that I would say that when I finished this and I said, if you don't like this novel, you're not going to love another Hardy novel. It's got really good characters. It's a great book. And then I've seen Jen and Courtney didn't like it. And I was like, what's going on? I think this is an excellent Hardy. And I thought that this was a real quintessential Hardy novel. It has your tragedy in it. It has strong characters. It has a really good... Eustacia Vi is possibly... Other than, Eustacia and Diggory Venn, both in this book, are my two favourite Hardy characters. And I find it very hard to pick between them, because Eustacia is she's so moralistically proud that she won't defend herself against allegations, and she's a real cut her nose off despite her face type, and it's so easy to get behind her and like her, even though at any point she could, like, all of her troubles, she could be like, no, I've got evidence that I didn't do that. She could have ended it, but I really felt like I believed her, that her pride was getting in the way of her happiness, and then she is so moralistically grey in the novel. I thought it was just so brilliant. And then, because Hardy doesn't do goodies and baddies, Hardy does flawed characters and
shit situations.
And I recommend this as the starting place for Hardy. It's sort of an average of all of his books. It's dark, but it's not the darkest. It's good. And I don't know why Courtney and Jen didn't like it, but I do value their opinions. So
you Hardy lovers, why do you not love this one?
Yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah.
we'll see when they do their wraps and reviews. We have a book review of this out.
We have a book review of this out, so I'm not going to get into it too much, but Life as a Unicorn is a memoir by Amrou Kadhi. They are a non-binary Muslim drag queen. How can you not be interested in reading that? So I did, and I got a lot out of it, and we discussed that in a video which I will link below.
Pale View of the Hills by Kazuo Ishiguro. This was his first novel, and I really liked this one. This is simultaneously really calm and really dark, and that calmness made it all the more creepy. And as this book is getting to the end, you're sort of like, what's going on? Like, what's actually been happening? It's such a calm tale, but you know that this girl has been murdered in this book, and you're trying to figure out how. And when it's all revealed, you're like, what the actual fuck?
That's an excellent response to an ending. I love that response to an ending.
And Ishiguro,
or a twist.
He's got this lovely. His writing style is so nice. I've given this 4 stars. It's a miserly 4 stars. It could almost be a 5-star book, but it's.
But you're a miser.
But I'm a miser. I don't give out my 5 stars lightly, and I like to say I like to say when it's a miserly 4 stars, because I often give out 4 stars a little bit generously as well. So,
yeah, okay.
Maybe I need a 4.5 star rating or something.
Or maybe star ratings are bullshit.
Maybe. The next 2 I'm going to review are Gathering Storm and A Memoir of Light. This is where Brandon Sanderson takes over from Robert Jordan. And I know Sanderson has said that in some places entire chapters were written by Jordan and he just put them in the novel, and in other pages he had a line from Jordan that he had to
turn into a chapter.
And that's what he had to deal with. A lot of people have said that the books greatly improve when Sanderson takes over, and I say that they certainly speed up in plot considerably, and I am enjoying them considerably more now that he has taken over. I really feel that Jordan, because he had a terminal illness, he had a blood disease, and he knew he was dying, and I really feel like the way that the last few books sort of slogged on and didn't go anywhere was maybe sort of Jordan not coming to terms with his own immortality.
His own mortality,
sorry. But one of the real differences I've noticed between Sanderson and Jordan in the writing style, there's a few differences, but Jordan would write for chapters and chapters and chapters from one perspective, and Sanderson would flip. And there's one scene in the second last book where literally there's 2 generals are having a conversation. It's separate conversations, and he goes 2 lines from one general, and he flips to the other general 2 lines, and they're deciding whether they're going to fight or not. And you have those conversations simultaneously. And it's not something that Jordan would have ever done, but Sanderson has done it, and it's quite good.
Yeah.
A lot of the twists here are really foreshadowed by Jordan really hard, and there's a twist coming in the final book surrounding Mazrim Taim, which is just so bloody obvious now that it's like...
Yeah.
Can't say, like, particularly The Gathering Storm, if Jordan had been writing that and not Sanderson, I think it would have been at least 4 books. There are at least 4 stopping points in those novels. What happened with Semi-Rag would have been a stopping point. So it's so much better and so much quicker, and I could not see how these novels were going to finish, and I can now. I rated both of them 4 stars. I think, though, Wheel of Time, if you've read a chapter in the first book, you know if you like it.
I'm quite new to audiobooking, so I'm sort of limiting myself to non-fiction and YA at the moment. So I have read on audiobook. I've listened to 3 more of the Wayward Children series. So I've listened to Down Among the Sticks and Bones, Beneath the Sugar Sky, and In an Absent Dream. Now, because these are sequels, I don't really want to give too much away, but I do really enjoy that these are sort of little novellas that could have been combined into one big epic exploration of all these little worlds that connect through the doors. If you know the premise of the Wayward Children series, it's built around the idea that children can find a door into another world, much like Alice in Wonderland, and that they often end up returning to our world, and when they do so, they're often feeling displaced and miserable and want to go back to the magical fantasy land that they've returned from. And these children end up in our school specifically for them. The exploration of the worlds behind the doors in each of the sequels is really interesting, and I really like the return of characters that sometimes you're getting backstory and that sort of thing, so that characters that you might think are done with by the end of the first book can return, because they're not written in sort of a linear timeline, which is really nice. And so you get lots of exploration and backstory and forward story as well, and I like a series that is a little bit amorphous like that, like a little bit freeform. Thoroughly whimsical, lots of things of belonging and found family, and just lots of feel-good identity based themes in each of them. They are nice to read. Yeah, so I'm enjoying them.
The next 2 books are 2 more disappointing books for me, I'm sorry. Let me go backwards. Pachinko by Jin Lee.
Ooh.
This is an intergenerational novel set in South Korea and Japan about the South Korean minority in Japan. It had a good skeleton to it, but it didn't have any good flesh. I didn't like the writing. That's what I'm going to say.
Didn't like the writing.
I didn't like the writing. I can see what this book was trying to do. It definitely set up some interesting things, but I don't know what Pachinko is. I don't know if many Westerners who are not into Asian culture would, but essentially, from what I can gather from the novel, they are a gambling machine, essentially like the Pokies, but very different.
Yeah, okay.
And that is explored in half the novel, and then this idea of family honour is explored, but I just found the writing cold, and
I mean, not every book is for every person.
yeah, I suspect that other people will love this book. There's enough in this book for it to be excellent. Not a Scott novel, but totally, this is, belonging, identity, like all of these sort of things that make a good novel are in it. So there's enough in this to be an excellent novel. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
The next one is The Plague. Now, I think I've been mispronouncing his name. I think it's Albert Camus, not Albert Camus. So, I think I've got that wrong in a few videos. But it doesn't matter, because I'm not going to be reading another Camus ever again. This was absolutely rubbish. Can somebody dig him up and tell him that women exist and that they speak? That would be... Like, there is a woman in this book who does not appear, but is a plot point and dies, and like
Right.
it's just, and like her beauty is described, but she doesn't get a word, and it's just, this is a novel about a city that is suffering from some sort of infective illness. You know, I'm sure we can all understand that.
What's going on.
And we're talking about the sort of lockdown that it might go in. And this was not the reason why it was bad. This was just, it was poor, it was macho. It might have been Amrita who said that she calls this style of novel dicklit.
Yeah.
It's essentially, this is men's literature as opposed to women's literature, and it was lacking in every single way. This is not real literature.
So is it possible that it's enjoyable in the same way that cock rock is enjoyable? Like, haha, that's kind of funny.
Oh no, some people will hate my review of this and call me an idiot in the comments.
Right.
Like, let's be fair.
Will all of those people be men?
Potentially, but no.
Okay.
I don't get along with that style of writing.
So it's not the entirety of the novel that's a waste, but the style has ruined it for you.
I have nothing nice to say about this novel. Maybe it's the translator again, but I've blamed the translator for his other book that I didn't like. I'm not giving him another shot.
Anyway, my turn.
Yep.
Our turn.
Our turn. You're up to Ice Candy Man.
Ice Candy Man.
We have a review out on this.
Yeah, so check that out.
Check.
I think this is potentially actually great, but I think that I'm just not educated enough to enjoy a little bit, but I did enjoy it.
This is very much finding the right book for the right reader.
Yeah.
And I think that it is a requirement of this book for you to be the right reader. It's a requirement that you are very knowledgeable of Pakistan and India's culture.
And the writing is good, so...
Yeah. The Passion According to Camilla by Marcos Aguinis. This was my second Argentinian read of the month. This is a love story set in the Cuban Revolution, with resistance fighters of Che Guevara's, Che Guevara, about Fidel Castro's army.
Yeah, okay.
And this was good. I like this one. This was... so we have an Argentinian influence on here. We have an Argentinian character and we have a Cuban character. And essentially, I just think read it. We've got gay representation. We've got a discussion of homophobia. With
regards to Fidel Castro?
Fidel Castro is a real minor character in this novel.
What about Che Guevara?
Even less.
Okay. Motorcycle Diaries is on my TBR, and one of the reasons for that is Che Guevara is considered to be homophobic, and mainly based on some of the passages in Motorcycle Diaries, which is one of the reasons I want to read it, to see, sort of gauge where that attitude sort of sits. So
yeah, I think there's definitely a homophobic culture that existed at the time of the revolution.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that is discussed in this novel a little bit.
Super interesting.
Like how ideals can change with power, and how corruption, like how Fidel Castro's original ideas and Soviet communists' ideas were different, and how they sort of changed with time.
Yeah.
And it was quite critical of how communism can be corrupted as well. So I thought that was an excellent novel. I've given it 4 stars. Very good. I think if any of that interests you, pick it up.
Also be my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My book of the month was Earthlings by Sakara Murata. This is my 3rd Japanese book for the Invisible Cities readathon, and 1 DNF, 1 1-star, and 1 5-star. I'm actually really happy with that. to read a 1-star for a 5-star. That is
A good exchange.
Yeah, I think I would read 1 1-star and 1 5-star over 2 4-stars.
Yeah. I also think exploring what you don't necessarily enjoy is very rarely a waste of time. But that's part of the reason why I don't do star ratings, because I think that they're stupid.
Now, Sakara Murata is the author of Convenience Store Woman, and if you have read Convenience Store Woman, a lot of the themes and ideas in Convenience Store Woman, which is an excellent novel, are in Earthling. And I would just say that then Earthling is just so much more than that. There is so much more involved, and I would say imagine Convenience Store Woman and maybe Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi merged into one novel through the eyes of a child who believes that she is a Puppian who is an alien.
Puppian. I just want to read it so I can say that over and over again.
Puppian. This is one of the darkest novels I have read.
Ooh.
And I read dark novels. Trigger warning.
For all of them?
Trigger warning. Cannibalism, rape, suicide, like that's where it starts. So
all of them.
So yeah, let's just
don't go into it if you're feeling a bit fragile.
Yeah, like its ending is a little bit fucked up, and by that time I already loved the novel, and it didn't take away from my love of the novel. But it didn't give me the icing on the top that I wanted. But this was still this is a special book, I think, and I think that if you like dark novels, you should read it. If you liked Convenience Store Woman, I would actually recommend reading Convenience Store Woman before Earthling. I think it puts you in the frame of mind for like. To understand the themes in Convenience Store Woman exist in Earthling, but that we're moving on.
Oh, you feel like it's a bit building block without being like a literal series.
Yeah, totally unrelated books. You can totally read them in whatever order you want. There's nothing connected. But
sometimes
I feel like your enjoyment of Earthling will be increased if you have read Convenience Store Woman first, is what I am saying. This explores bodily autonomy. This explores just so much. I don't want to say it with I feel like I might ruin it if I say stuff. But
sounds like a book that I should read, and then we'll
this probably make my this could be my book of the year.
Ooh.
Weird to say that in January, but
it's not weird. The book appears when the book appears.
Yeah, but I feel like there's so much potential. Like I'm gonna read another 100+ books. There's so much potential to displace this book, but it will take a special book to displace this book, and this book is a special book.
Awesome.
So, yeah. All right, now what's next?
Another audiobook that I listened to this month was Overground Railroad, The Green Book, and Roots of Black Travel in America. I picked this up because Greg, it's supposedly fun, wrapped it up. I actually suspect it was in one of his top lists for 2020, but I might be wrong. It might have been just in his December wrap up or something. And it was on script. It was the double whammy. He recommended it, and then something advertised it to me, and I went, oh, I know what that is. I'll listen to that. And I'm really glad I did. I learnt quite a lot about the practical challenges of being a black person in America. Sort of, it covers like 3 decades, so quite a big time period, but also some of the like infrastructural things that were done to limit the economic and social growth of African Americans. Some of them intentional and some of them not intentional, but all of them the result of racism of some description. If we put even half the energy that we put into like being horrid to each other into not being horrid to each other, we'd be so much better off. Like, put that energy into literally improving any other aspect of human beings' experience, and we'd be so much further ahead than we are now. It is ridiculous the amount of effort that went into ensuring that black and white segregation continue, that black people remain poorer, that like all of those things, limiting their access to things like recreation time and beaches. Like, it's ridiculous. It's so infuriating. And
do you know what gets me about that? It's that racism towards black people actually diminishes the quality of life of white people, so that white people have to buy into this lie to fuck black people. It's so dumb. It's dumb. It's it's very infuriating. And so listening to this was infuriating, but it was also eye-opening as far as the privilege that we've never had to consider, and the multi-generational impact that has, the kind of habits that form and the kind of traditions that come out of essentially avoiding danger are parts of stereotypes that we have about black people even now, and they're informed by trauma and by discrimination and by legitimate like risk of your life. And I think the more that white people can learn about these sort of formative constructs and the systemic nature of racism, the better off we'll be as a society. So I think everyone should read Overground Railroad, among all the other millions of books that we should read. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Black Leopard, Red Wolf, Marlon James. This was a fucking disappointment. This was bad.
And you loved him so much.
My book of the year last year was Brief History of 7 Killings by Marlon James. And
so he's fallen from a very high pedestal.
I do not understand how he wrote this novel. It is clearly the same author, right? It is just so clearly the same author. But the plot was so simple. The world building was tedious. It was a mess. Marlon James has thrown a whole bunch of things in here and not given any real consideration about it. Essentially, this follows two characters. It follows Tracker, who is the wolf, and it follows Leopard, who is the leopard.
That makes sense.
So this is what happens this is the entire novel in real quick form. Tracker and Leopard go for a walk to find this kid. They find some bad guy. They fight said bad guy after having an in-depth conversation of it. They go for another walk. Leopard finds somebody to fuck. Tracker gets jealous. They go for a walk. They find a bad guy. They discuss the bad guy. They fight. They go for a walk. Leopard finds somebody to fuck. Tracker gets jealous. Repeat for 600 pages.
I'm still interested to read it.
Read Brief History of 7 Killings. It's better. Do not. I know you're attracted by me saying I hate a book. But please do not judge Marlon James on this book. I will not be continuing with this series. There was stuff in this. I can see, if you do like this book, you're more patient to than me. But
which wouldn't be hard.
But there was Okay, so I'll give you an example of one thing that like really disappointed me in this novel. At some point, they fight hyena women, right? And Marlon James is at all points critical of sexuality and is very like a lot of this is about sex, right?
Yeah.
And he like by the way, trigger warning, just all the stuff to do with sex that is bad. And some of the stuff that's good, but you might not have think that is good.
Yeah.
Like, right? Just all of the stuff. Anyway, these women have between their legs massive things that look like penises. Now, that could have been a real interesting discussion around intersexed or non-binary sexual people or some sort of sexual identity thing.
Yeah.
But when I realised, I know a little bit about hyenas from some sort of Attenborough documentary that I've read or watched or something. Hyenas, the women in hyenas have external vulvas. They go out instead of in.
Okay.
Right.
So he's actually just described hyena anatomy.
Yes. And therefore, like, for me, I was like, but where is, like, I mean, and he could have put more in about that, but it was just...
Okay.
Yeah, but he didn't. And it was really, like, lacking in that, like, he could have had a lot of literary discussion, and he didn't. This one I found quite... I'm a bit ambivalent on this one, The Shadow King. This is set in Ethiopia at the time of the Second World War when Mussolini is essentially invading. It follows a group of women and one man, and it is quite brilliant in that it compares the bodily autonomy and the rape and the mistreatment of these women with the treatment of Ethiopia by the Italians, and I really appreciated that as a clever piece of writing. And this book could have been brilliant if it wasn't fucking boring. It was so boring. This is a very good book that just
didn't entertain you.
Did not. It was just lacking in that. And I can just, everything that I want in a novel is here, and I can see how it's brilliant and I can see how it's lovely, and it was just so tediously boring. I started reading this, I had to switch to audiobook, otherwise I was going to DNF it. I was kind of interested in the literary analysis side of it, but not interested in
like the basic plot.
In the basic plot.
That actually sounds like a book that I will enjoy more than you enjoyed. I'm not just being...
Yeah, no. If you like this book, this is actually a brilliant book. This got listed for the Booker Prize. It deserves that short list. It is...
Yeah.
It is... I can see what she is doing. It is brilliant. It has... I think it has the most satisfying rape scene I have ever read, which is a weird thing to say.
I don't like you saying that sentence, but okay.
When you read it, I think people who have read it will know the scene I'm talking about, and that is potentially one of the best scenes I have ever read ever. It was just so well done. The way the character Harut is able to take back control in that scene was absolutely brilliant and very clever, and it was incredibly good, and that idea was brilliant. And Magister she can clearly write, and I will be interested in her next book, but
it wasn't it.
I feel like it was actually really close.
Which is more frustrating, I think.
That is more frustrating. I've given it 3 stars, but I think that from the analysis, I think that what I'm saying about it is you can probably see whether if you really like literary fiction and you're entertained by that sort of what the author is doing and that analysis of it,
And you don't necessarily need a plot.
yeah, then this is for you. It does have a plot. It is not a strong plot, but it does have a plot. Yeah, I thought it was brilliant but not enjoyable. That is it. Now,
Awesome.
I've got one novel left. Do you have one novel now left?
Well, I counted this as 2, because it's 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, I've counted it as 1, but it is 2.
it is 2. So we both read Mouse. It took me about 3 hours and it took Scott about 3 months.
I did not.
I really enjoyed this. I actually haven't asked you if you liked it or not.
I did like it. When I rated this on Goodreads, I just could not find a rating below 4 stars on Goodreads, which is what I gave it. But I thought it was quite good.
We're going to do a proper review on this, so we won't get into it too much. But it is essentially, it's a story about a man's experience in the Holocaust, but more than that, it's a story about his relationship with his son as he tells the story of his experience in the Holocaust, and both. And I guess all Jewish people are represented in this graphic novel as mice.
Yep.
And German Nazis as cats. And...
Well, even all Germans as cats, yeah?
Yeah. And Polish people as pigs.
And Americans as dogs, and French people as frogs.
Yes, so...
And potentially Israeli Jews as porcupines, but they were never drawn. That was just a reference.
That was just a reference.
I really liked, because obviously in World War II, obviously Jewish people could pass as non-Jewish people in certain situations, and I really liked the use of masks to demonstrate that.
For me, one of the main pulls for this is I have a grandparent who experienced World War II not as a Jewish person, but as a Latvian person. So someone who was sort of displaced by the Soviet border moving and just getting out of the way of World War II, basically.
Having that very positive choice between Stalin and Hitler.
That's it. And always said to me, well, I wasn't Jewish, so I was more likely to be safe under Hitler. Which is terrifying and a horrible choice to try and make at 15, which was how old he was at the time. But the intricacies of getting to know about someone's history when their history is something like this really hit home for me. And a lot of the sort of meta conversation surrounding the conversation of the Holocaust was really familiar. And I think anyone who is probably the grandchild rather than the child of a refugee probably would find some kind of familiarity in that. And it was really interesting to me that multi-generational similarity in refugees, in the offspring and grand offspring of refugees. Was something that I didn't expect to get out of this, and I did.
Yeah.
But we'll review it properly.
I think that this is a novel, a graphic novel, that it is very hard to not find something enjoyable, not find something interesting in.
Yeah.
And as such, I think that everybody should
pick it up.
Because
I don't know if this is necessarily a good exploration into graphic novels, because I don't think it really is representative of what most graphic novels will hold. I think this is quite unique. So my earlier question still stands. What graphic novels should you read if you're first experimenting with graphic novels?
You should pick up Saga and see if you have an opinion on it.
Yeah, I suspect that'll happen because it looks like a quick read.
Yeah, it's not long. All right. That brings us to the end, an hour 25. I've got a little bit of editing out to do, but this is going to be our longest video yet, I think. So next week we will do Friday reads. We might do Saturday reads. We haven't decided.
Yeah, we'll see how we go, and maybe do a weekly format for a little bit. But again, we'd be interested in your input. Did you enjoy this long-winded, enormous list of books? What do you think?
Yeah. Thank you for watching. If you got to the end,
I would like to give you a cookie, but I'm not going to.
Bake yourself a cookie and say it's from us. Put yourself an emoji of a mouse in the comments.
Yes!
I hope there's a mouse emoji.
I'm sure there is.
If there's not, just put any animal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, love you. Bye.